cool thing about the LA Film School is that they have sound studios or sound stages in the school. They had about like 14 of them, and they were named after really big movie producers and actors and directors. You know, like there was like the Chaplin stage named after Charlie Chaplin. And I remember one of my first challenges within my first month of being there, we went to the London Hotel in Beverly Hills, and the director of video said, hey, we want to go live on the roof of this hotel. And I said, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, like the live show that we do in the studio, we want to do it on the roof of the London. The film industry is not about what you know, it's about who you know. Yeah, for sure. But then when you know somebody and you show up to set, you need to know what you're doing.
What's up everyone, my name is Václav Černošek and I'm the founder of BlueLens production. For this episode, I traveled to Javier's podcast studio in the Florida Keys. We talked about how he found his passion into filmmaking. Then he described to me his story of going to LA Film School, then working on big production projects, to now owning his business. I hope you will like this episode and enjoy it. So thank you for being here, letting me to film in your studio. So I want to start a little bit looking back in your past, how you started in video production and media. When did you pick up the camera? I think I saw on your Instagram that it was like high school years when you got into that. So can you tell me a little bit about that, when you found your passion into the media?
Yeah, well, first thing I want to say is thank you for having me. I really appreciate you coming to the studio and checking it out, and being a part of what I'm doing is great, and I'm looking forward to just kind of saying my story on your podcast. So first off, thank you for having me. And it's kind of a long story. It's a long start, but I'll kind of go from the beginning, and I have to give a couple shout outs and give some credit to where credit is due. But we both graduated from the same high school, just so everybody knows, Coral Shores High School down here in the Florida Keys. And the first person I want to kind of give a shout out to is Michelle Theory. She was our video productions teacher. Yeah. Did you have her as well? Yes. Yeah, so that's kind of the first person I want to talk about. And actually the funny story is that I've always been into photo and video, but I never knew that it was a career, if that makes sense.
That's kind of same for me.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting thing. But anyways, when I was a sophomore in high school, you at the end of every year you get like the course sheet that tells you, like all the different, PE and marine mechanics down here in the Keys, obviously, auto mechanics, and like there's all these different classes. And anyways, I think you get to choose. So you got 3 electives, and they let you choose 7 because in case the classes fill up, they put you in like number 4. And I remember I chose video production as number 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was not, at the time, I was stuck in video productions. So it was funny that I got put into a class that I didn't want to do. And at the time, I thought the video productions class was more of a joke. And we did, the school did a lot of funny videos. And I was never the type of person to be on camera. As you can see, I'm always behind the camera now. And I thought video productions was making silly videos and being in silly videos. And anyways, long story short, in my high school years, by my first ever video I did during the summer of freshman and sophomore year. Okay. So I got put into the class. My mom works at the high school, and she said, "You're gonna love Michelle. It's gonna be a great class." And towards the end of freshman year, I told Michelle, I said, "Hey, we do a welcome back video every year, and I'm going to be in your class next year. Could I film that?" And anyways, 2 weeks before school even started, I went to her class. She gave me a camera. I had no idea what I was doing. I went around to all the teachers, and we filmed a welcome back video. Nice. And it took off from there because I ultimately realized, hey, video productions is great for me because I want to create content. Yeah. And I used to think you had to be in the videos, and it really all started there. I used to do all of the videos, I want to say, for the high school. There was other kids that were also really into it, but I was probably the one that was most interested in it. And I mean, not to bash any of my other teachers, but like I used to go to school for 7 periods in the day, and I was thinking about video productions for every single one of those classes. It doesn't matter if I was in reading or math or English. I was always just thinking about the video that I was working on.
Yeah.
I used to bring my own laptop to her class, so I would I would be in my science class on my laptop pretending like I was taking notes, but really I was editing videos the entire time. And I really just gained that passion, and Miss Theory had all the equipment there for us to use. And eventually I said, hey, I want to get my own camera, and I had my own laptop, and I started doing my own videos.
Nice.
And most of my first clients were actually referred to by Michelle.
Okay.
She would have people and businesses come to her and say, hey, are there any kids that can make me a video? And she would always say, Javier Exposito, go to Javier Exposito. And that was really how I started in video and video productions. And then from there, I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I moved out to LA and I went to film school.
Do you have any project that you did in high school, maybe that she told you and you already did actual project for a client while you were still in high school?
Yeah, that was an interesting topic because I would do jobs that I was paid for, but I would also get a grade in her class for it. So that was kind of a fun thing outside of what I did in the school and like projects for the school. Like I made my senior year video where it was like a music video to, I don't even remember the song right now, but anyways, if you go to my YouTube, it's all on there, all my old projects from Coral Shores. I've actually recently, I redid all my thumbnails and I deleted a couple because they were a little bit embarrassing, and I was, thinking to myself, hey, I'm a little bit more professional now, and maybe doing these, funny skits or having these funny skits on my YouTube isn't the best idea, but that definitely, it was always a great feeling to kind of have her and, ultimately guide me to become what I am now.
Nice. So when you were in that senior year and you were looking for colleges and maybe what you're going to do after school, how did you figure that you want to go to film school and that you want to go to LA?
Yeah. I mean, anybody who's graduated from Coral Shores knows that the staff there and the faculty are really, really on top of all of the students, and they're always asking you, have you applied to scholarships? Have you applied to schools? What schools are you going to? And I mean, just to name drop a couple people, Chris Harris, she was our senior guide counselor. She was amazing. She's not at the school anymore, but she was a great person to have there guiding us to what we were doing. Also Nancy Truesdale, she was an English teacher there. One of the projects that we would do in her class was, I don't remember if it was an essay or exactly the format, but you had to basically figure out what school you were going to, what you were going to do, and how you were going to get there.
Yeah.
And she was actually the first one that made me, I always said, I'm going to do videos. And Ms. Truesdale is like, okay, but what's your plan? How are you going to do videos? And that's when I started looking at film schools. From an early age, I knew I wanted to go to out-of-state college.
Okay.
This was even before video came along. So I always knew I wanted to go somewhere to Louisiana. I wanted to go to Alabama. There was like a couple different colleges that I had in mind.
Yeah.
And I started looking at film programs.
Okay.
And for instance, Full Sail University is one of the big film programs here in Florida. And I was really leaning towards that school. But I always told myself, I want to do something bigger than Florida. I want to leave Florida, even though Orlando is nothing like the Keys.
Yeah.
And one day I stumbled across, it's called the Los Angeles Film School, and that's where I went, graduated from, and that's ultimately where I went. And for me, LA was perfect. It was way out of my comfort zone. It was really far away from home, 2,900 miles to be exact. And a couple of months actually before moving out there, me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, we went to LA in April before I graduated in May, and we went to LA in April. I did a tour of the school, and I remember they were walking us through all the classes, and the cool thing about the LA Film School is that they have sound studios or sound stages in the school. They had about like 14 of them, and they were named after really big movie producers and actors and directors. So like every, like there was like the Chaplin stage named after Charlie Chaplin. So anyways, I remember like getting to see the classes, getting to see the school, and it was super fancy and high tech. And anyways, I remember being there, and I walked into one of the studios or sound stages, and it was like walking into Warner Brothers. And they had the entire house set up with all the lights, and it looked like you were outside because of the wallpaper that they had, but you weren't. You were in a room. And I remember standing in that stage. It was called the main stage. So they had all the different stages, but this was their main stage. It was the biggest one they had. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, I'm going to this school. I was like, this is where we're moving here, and this is where I'm going. I was so excited to just be there and see that this school had basically everything that a large production would have, and that's really what made, with no plan whatsoever, because when we moved to LA, we didn't even have a place to live.
Oh, wow.
We moved out there with a trailer. It was like a 25-foot RV behind us. And we're like, we'll find a place to park it. No worries. So we had zero plan, but I knew my end goal.
So you drove from the Keys to LA, and you were to figure it out what's going to happen.
Yeah. So actually in 2017, we had a really large hurricane down here.
Yeah, Irma.
It was Hurricane Irma. And that happened in September.
Yeah.
So I was going to move out to LA right after my senior year. I graduated in May, and I said, I'm going to spend one more summer here in the Keys. And in August, when school's supposed to start again, that's when I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And anyways, August came around, and the trailer that we had needed some work. So I said, let's wait one more month, and then we'll move. Well, anyways, we got the trailer done in the month. We were ready to move out in September, but then the hurricane came. So that delayed us a little bit, but not much. The hurricane passed, and in October is when we took off. We actually left the Keys. I will always remember this. It was October 14th.
Okay.
And it took us 9 days to get to LA. Yeah, we did a lot of stops. We had a dog. His name was Jack. He's passed away, but he was with us. And I mean, that trip was probably the best trip that we've ever taken, because we were kids. We had no idea what we were doing, and we were completely winging it. But I remember we got to LA, and the first night there, my wife already had a job interview. That's how great she is at just being on top of stuff.
Nice.
I didn't have a job. I said, I'm gonna figure it out. That's how I always think. That's how I always have been. I'm just gonna figure it out. And she had a job interview, which didn't go well because we got to LA really late, and she was supposed to have the job interview at like 3 p.m. and it was like 7 in the afternoon when we were when we got there. But anyways, I remember we dropped off our trailer at a campground. We went to the job interview, which was close to Hollywood. And my first memory of LA was we drove to Hollywood Boulevard in our truck, in our giant diesel truck, which is not California friendly at all. Yeah. And I just remember turning the radio up as loud as possible. And it was, I forget what song it even was, but I remember just driving on Hollywood Boulevard and seeing all the stars on the sidewalk, and we were cranking the radio, just singing along. And it was probably we just felt it was the right place to be. And it's just all, it all took off from there, yeah.
So when you moved there, so at that time you started going to film school, right? Yep. So from film school, when you came to new city, you started going to school, did you have like the main goal now to concentrate on school and learn new things there? Or did you also do maybe on the side some video projects, or what did you do at that time? Yeah,
that's a interesting story, and I have to think about that. I know the answer, but I have to think about that. But what happened was, and this is going back to the trailer, right? So I built the trailer when we were out here in Florida, and I did a lot of remodeling to it. I tore out a bunch of stuff. The roof had some water damage. I redid that. My dad helped a lot. He had all the tools and the experience, but I was the one that did all the work.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends to this day, he was at my wedding. He's been there for everything important that's happened to us in our life. His name's Adam Garcia. He started a company in LA where he was building camper vans.
Okay.
Not to call you out, Adam, but he didn't know how to build camper vans. He just had a company that he would hire subcontractors to build them. And his main goal was actually to film the company and the shop and have a TV show. And he was always great at making sure the bills were paid, I got paid, and one day, Adam's actually from here. He graduated from Coral Shores as well.
Oh, okay.
And one day he makes a post on Facebook and says, hey, I live in LA, and the person that was working for him actually had quit. They kind of just, they disappeared off the face of the earth. And he makes a post and he says, hey, I have this new van that I'm building in a new company that I started, and I don't have anybody to finish it because he didn't have any of the experience. And my wife had him on Facebook because they graduated together. And she goes, hey, one of my friends is out here and he's building camper vans. And I was already going to film school and I was looking for a job. And anyways, he goes, hey, I have this friend. He posted on Facebook that he needs help finishing a camper van. And I didn't realize he had a company. I thought he was building a camper van for himself. And I remember I told my wife, I said, I'm not building a van for somebody for beer and pizza. And anyways, just long story short, one day I met him. I went over to his shop. He had a shop in Bell Gardens.
Oh, nice.
And I got to meet him for the first time really there. My wife knew him very well, but I had never met him in the past. But anyways, I got to meet him. He showed me the shop. He said, would you be interested in working for me and building vans? And it all took off from there. And basically we built over 20 vans in the time that we had the company. And he was always working full-time in production and, just to name drop a couple show, like This Is Us was a big TV show. He did a lot of like Boost Mobile commercials. He did stuff for Toyota and Bloodline actually down here in the Florida Keys. So just trying to think of some of the stuff that he's worked on, but the list goes on. He did Below Deck, which is like a huge show. He did that in Norway. He actually met his girlfriend there, and they both live here in the States now together. So he's really been the person that got me from doing videos in high school to working on multi-million-dollar productions.
That's cool.
And that's kind of where it all started, is we were doing the vans, and I was kind of building everything. He was working on productions on the side, and every once in a while, when they needed a production assistant for something, he would always say, hey, Javier, take the day off and come and work on a set with me. And I mean, just to kind of say the first big production that I ever worked on was with Adam. Thanks to him, he got me on this show. He was actually the second, which is the third assistant director on a show, and he got me a job as a production assistant. Wow. And it was a Boost Mobile commercial with a couple of really big wrestlers who I don't remember the names of, but there was big names, and I remember that was my first ever production that I had been on, and really it took off from there. He saw what I was capable of, and I've always been a really hard worker, and it's just kind of been something where we've always worked on shows together. We recently just finished 6 months on a TV show called Bad Monkey down here in South Florida. One of the big actors was Vince Vaughn. Oh, wow. And that show we filmed for 6 months here, and it's not out yet. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, but hopefully sooner than later. It should be on Apple TV. But really, from film school to actually getting jobs in the film industry, I have to thank Adam Garcia really for kind of, bringing me into that world, because the film industry is not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But then when you know somebody and you show up to set, you need to know what you're doing. So it's who you know and then what you know is really how it works.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit how was your feelings when you actually got to your first like on-set job, and you came from Florida Keys, like graduated from Coral Shores, and now you're in LA, you're going to big production sets. How did you feel about actually being and seeing all the production?
I mean, I hate to say this, but it's been long enough where I can, but it's fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. I remember one of the first things that happened is that I was given a walkie-talkie with an earpiece. And for instance, in the film industry, it's kind of like police officers. There's a very specific way that you talk on radio. So like if I'm trying to call Adam, it's like, hey, Javier to Adam, and then Adam goes, go ahead, and then I tell him what to say. And just from that was the first thing that I was like, oh my goodness, I was given a radio and I have no idea how to even talk on the radio. And really, it's again, doing stuff in high school and doing stuff in film school really tailored me to know what to get myself into, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I was always the type of person that if somebody said to do something, it would be like, oh, okay, I got it. If I knew what I was doing, or if I didn't know what I was doing, I would say, oh, okay, I got it. And then I would call Adam and be like, dude, they just asked me to do this. Like, what does that mean? Or like, for instance, when somebody says on the radio, like, what's your 20? That means, where are you?
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of slang that you don't know in the industry, and I would just pretend like I knew what I was talking about, and I'd be like, Adam, what's your 20 mean? And he's like, they're asking you where you are. So really, again, for me, I was a really small fish in like a really big pond, and it was really crazy that I knew the technology and the equipment, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And again, back to just fake it till you make it. I was able to I figured it out, and that was kind of one of the biggest things. And probably wouldn't have done it without Adam, but just being able to, always say, "Yep, I got it. I'm gonna make sure it happens." That's how I got, the director on that commercial actually at the very end said, came up to me and said, "Hey, what's your name? Like, you've been doing a good job today." Because I stood out to him, and a lot of production assistants just kind of stand around with their hands in their pocket, and I'm not that type of person. I was the type of person where, as a production assistant, if you would have said, hold this camera, I would grab it and I'd say, what do you want me to do? Not knowing what I was supposed to do. So it was definitely it was an eye-opener. It was a completely different world for me. Luckily, I had gone to the LA Film School, or actually at the time I was in film school still. So I had worked with really big cameras and the large dollies, and kind of like I had experienced it all, but not to the level of the professionals that I was working with. And that was kind of, it was eye-opening for me, but little by little, like, I took all the information that I learned on that set, and the next time I was at a big production, I kind of just built and built and built.
Nice. So can you tell me a little bit now about, we talked about it before we started recording, your first big job, like after film school. You told me when you got this position that had so many titles, and you were now in the position when you had people coming to you and asking you questions, and you were 19 years old. So how did you get into that job, and how did you be able to actually work in there, and did you know the knowledge that you needed, or you kind of went through it again and was able to figure out what you were doing while you were working the job?
Yeah, so again, back to Adam, kind of to, like, again, he's really gotten me from Vandals Customs, which was the vans, to working at FabFitFun, which is what you're referring to, and larger sets. I feel like Adam has gotten me every single one of my jobs ever since I got out of high school. So thanks again for that, buddy. But anyways, after I was in the very last couple of months of film school, and Adam was working at a company called FabFitFun. He was a camera operator for one of their live shows. And one day, I forget if somebody had quit or got sick, but they needed a camera operator. And he said, I know a guy, and he can do a great job. And I remember Adam saying, hey man, you can come, you can camera operate. They're paying $300 for a day, and it's just a couple of hours because we film a show, and then you're done. And I remember being in film school, working as a production assistant, making like $100 or $180 for 12 hours. I remember going, wait, $300 for 8 hours? I said, sign me up. You let me know when I need to show up. And anyways, I met a lot of great people at that place, at that job. And I was just a freelancer. I would camera operate for them only when the show was going on. So right around every month, they would do a series of shows. They would call me in for, 3 or 4 days. And again, everyone there I loved everybody. Everybody loved me. We all got together really well. We were all friends. And again, Adam, kind of brought me in. So me and Adam were working there together. Yeah. He was like a camera, or actually, I was a camera because it was the wide shot, so it was the easy shot. I didn't have to do much, and he was B camera, which was like the super tight close-ups. Yeah. And I just remember the camera being so shaky because it was a little tiny, like flimsy tripod, and he was always like trying so hard, like holding his breath to get a shot. But anyways, we all kind of started working together there, and one day, I was actually, me, Adam, my girlfriend at the time, and a couple other friends were all on a van trip in Yosemite.
Oh, okay.
And Yosemite National Park. And anyways, I get a phone call from an unknown number. And at the time, I was always working on, production assistant jobs. So I was like, oh, I got to answer this because it might be a job. And I remember answering it and having terrible signal. I could barely hear what the person was saying, but what I did hear was something along the lines of, hey, this is Cora from FabFitFun. She was part of the hiring team. She said, you've been recommended by a lot of the video team to take a job that we're looking for. And she's like, I wanted to see if you were interested. And I remember going, no, I'm not interested in a full-time job. Thanks, so I appreciate it. And she said, oh, okay, it might be something you want to consider. I said, well, I'm on vacation right now. Like, we'll have to talk about this later. And I just remember hanging up, and I was like, I'm not looking for a full-time job. And
you were still in school at that time?
Yeah, I was still in school. I had about like a month left.
Okay.
And then, anyways, we get back from our trip, and I get another call randomly, again, a different number. And I answer that call, because again, I'm answering every unknown number thinking it's a job. And it was actually a guy by the name of Zach Kamen. He was the director of production, or director of video. I forget which one of the two. Actually, director of production, because Andrew was the director of video. But anyways, he calls me and says, hey, Javier, I just wanted to, call you about the job that you were offered. We think you'd be a great addition to the team. And I knew him. I didn't know Cora, but I knew him. And I said, no, I'm not interested in a full-time job. And he said, hey, this might be something you want to consider. We're looking for somebody full-time. You're going to have benefits. You're going to make a little bit more money. It'd be a great addition. I said, oh, well, I'll think about it. So anyways, Cora calls me back and said, hey, we want you to come and interview. And I said, oh, okay, whatever. I'll come and I'll interview. And then I started getting a little bit more excited about the job because I was about to get out of film school and I was really looking for something. And anyways, finished film school, and I have an interview, and basically I got the job, and I was a content producer / studio manager / equipment manager, and Adam was still working there as a freelancer. He was, as I call it, a glorified freelancer. He was a freelancer working Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 because he didn't want to take a full-time job with them, but he worked there every single day that I worked there.
As a freelancer.
As a freelancer, the only difference is he didn't have any of the benefits.
Yeah.
But anyways, at that job, again, small fish in a really big pond. I was working with a lot of creative people that were really, really talented at what they do. And thanks to them, the job requirements were things like going live from the studio, and we expanded the control room and moved it into another room. So I reran all the cables for all the cameras. Wow. I built the lights that we hung in the studio and set them all up. And it was a little bit of everything. I remember one of my first challenges within my first month of being there, we went to the London Hotel in Beverly Hills, and the director of video said, hey, we want to go live on the roof of this hotel. And I said, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, like the live show that we do in the studio,
Gonna be on the roof.
we want to do it on the roof of the London. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we figure that out? And anyways, the technical director, who was also a freelancer on the show, I remember I said, okay, we'll figure it out. And I left the meeting and I went into my office, and I remember calling John, and I said, John, they want to go live from the roof of the London. And he was like, okay, we'll figure it out. You know, he was like, this is what we need and this is what we need to buy. And we made it all happen. I want to say we figured out exactly what we were doing about 20 minutes before the live show started. But things like that of putting me on the spot and giving me really hard jobs, and, you know, again, my mentality of just figure it out. I'll figure it out. That's kind of what gained me to where I am today. I learned so much from going live to working with really big influencers to building equipment lists and, you know, going to set, knowing exactly what lights you need, how many memory cards you need, if you need generator power because your lights are too big for the house. Yeah. There was so much that ultimately I got to use what I learned in film school and put it into an actual job, which is great. A lot of people go to college, you know, and they become engineers, and then they're working at Starbucks or, you know, working at a restaurant or whatever the case may be. So the biggest thing for me is that I'm really lucky that I was able to actually use my degree in what I was doing. And ultimately FabFitFun had some issues during COVID. They're still a great company. I know a lot of the people that still work there. I definitely keep in touch with all of my old co-workers, but they laid off some employees during COVID, and I was one of them. And at the time it was kind of a bummer for me, but it got me to where I am now, so I don't mind it at all. It was a great opportunity to just, you know, hey, go do your own thing, and I, you know, grew from there. We actually, Adam and I started Vandals Customs back up. We started building vans again. That's when it really got big, and we started doing like $100,000 Sprinter vans, and I mean really, really insane with like showers and everything like that. We filmed a lot of it. So the idea of having a TV show started to come to fruition, and we have some stuff edited. Unfortunately, nothing's been released because we're just so busy with life, but hopefully one day we can sit down and edit some of it. But yeah, I mean, FabFitFun and the jobs that I had there and all of the expectations was definitely what taught me a lot. And again, I was able to kind of use what I learned in film school to really grow and basically figure it out.
Figure it out. Nice. So at that time when COVID happened, at that time you moved back to Florida Keys, right? Yeah,
so we had Vandals Customs after COVID for about a year and a half. And Adam and I one day were like, hey, you know, you could build vans anywhere. And it was kind of a funny thing, but when I moved back to Florida, we had closed our shop in LA.
Okay.
And when I moved back to Florida, I had the mindset of, I'm gonna build vans in Florida. Because a warehouse would be cheaper and rent would be cheaper. So we said, you know, hey, let's do it all in Florida. So Adam actually purchased a home in LA during his time at FabFitFun. So great, he did a beautiful job renovating it.
Nice.
And it was great what he was able to do. So he kind of got not stuck out there, but he stayed out in LA. He loves it because he still works on really large productions out there. But I moved back to Florida because my nieces and nephews were starting to grow up, my wife's nieces and nephews. So anyways, we moved back with the idea of, hey, I'm gonna build vans here in Florida. And when I moved back, it all started with the locals from down here going, hey, Javier, you're back. You know, you work on TV shows and videos. Can you do a video for me, for my business? And then, you know, that one person told 10 people, and then those 10 people, 3 of them called me and said, hey, you did a video for this person. Can we do a podcast? And I started a podcast with my father-in-law called Untold Stories, all about fishing captains and like really funny stories. But one of the things I remember during one of the podcasts, they were talking about the smuggling days from back in the day in the Florida Keys, and the guy that we were interviewing said that $1 million in $20 bills weighed 80 pounds.
Oh my!
And instead of counting money, they would weigh $20 bills, and that's how he knew approximately how. That's how much.
Crazy.
That's how many $20 bills were coming in. But anyways, we did a podcast with him. That like he really got my name out there and brought me into the community, and by word of mouth and social media, everybody down here in the Florida Keys, or almost everybody, knows who I am or knows of me. And if anybody ever has any, video needs or marketing needs, they kind of know who to call. And that's kind of where I've, again, thinking I was going to start doing vans here in the Keys completely changed to going back to what my passion was, which is ultimately making videos.
Good. So can you just tell me a little bit what you do right now? How does your day usually look like, and what is your production specialized at, and what do you do here in the Keys?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of everything. I mean, I can't think of what I don't do. But anyways, I have a company now. I've had it for about 2 years. This November is going to officially be 3 years that I've had the company. I've always been doing videos, but I'm as an official LLC, it's going to be about 3 years now. Anyways, my company's called FilmJavier. We do a lot of marketing down here for different brands and companies. We do a lot of stuff with real estate agents and making videos for them, but also social media content to promote those properties. Family photos, weddings, the list goes on. Drone, I got my pilot's license probably about a year ago, my Part 107, to do it legally and be able to fly the drone for different companies. And there's a new restaurant down here called Papa Joe's. It has a beautiful sunset view. I've been doing all of their marketing basically when it comes to content creation and doing videos and stuff, and they make my job easy because it's really pretty. But from working weddings to working with businesses, restaurants, real estate agents, families for family photos, the list goes on. And even if the one I forgot is this podcast room actually now that I have, and I have an office in Tavernier. And I got the office in January, and it was just where my desk was, and I had another desk for an assistant. All my gear lives there. And one day I talked to the landlord, because it's a new building. I said, "Hey, you have a ton of offices available. What do you think if I got another one and started a podcast room?" And he was nice enough to basically let me rent out the space to other creators. So if anybody down here in the Keys, if you're like a videographer or photographer, if you do any like filming yourself for your social media as a real estate agent, whatever it may be, I basically have a second office, which is where we're in right now, and that's where anybody can come in and rent the space without me needing to be here. Or if you want help with your production, I can also do all of the necessary work to edit and film your podcast or anything you may need. But basically, I have an office here now that's I call it my creative space, and it's where I like to hang out and
it's a really nice space.
Yeah, it's where I do the fun stuff. You know, the other office is a little bit darker. It's more for editing and it's more for work. This is where all the magic happens.
Yeah. So at the end, can you tell me a little bit that for people that are maybe still in a high school now, thinking about going to film school or some college, learning about video productions, is there something that you would tell them to maybe motivate them, or tell them maybe that they could do to get experience while they're still in school, or if they're maybe about to graduate college now, what they could do to actually make a career in video production?
Yeah. That's actually a good question, and the first thing I'm going to start with is another shout out. And basically, there's 2 high schoolers that work for me right now, currently, as we speak. One of them is graduating this year, which is a bummer. She's actually moving out to Hawaii. Her name's Malia. Wow. She does an amazing job with editing and helping me with whatever I need filming wise. Basically, anything I need from her, she's on top of it and she gets it done.
Nice.
The other student, he's a junior in high school, so he's going to kind of replace Malia when she leaves. I've been training him and getting him, started with the job, and he's doing a great job editing. He's filmed for me and again, does a little bit of everything. His name is Riley. They're both absolutely great. So to answer your question, I love working with that next generation, and the two of them are great because not only are they working for me and they're helping me out, but I'm teaching them a lot, and I don't hold anything back. If they have a question, I tell them exactly how to do it. Currently with Riley, I've been talking to him how to basically set up an LLC or a sole proprietorship so that he can ride stuff off on his taxes. So there's I hold nothing back, but I mean, when it comes to working in this industry, it's not an easy industry to be in, especially with the larger production stuff. If you want to be in really big productions, I always recommend to everybody, you need to start as a production assistant. That's how I started. From there, if you want to do camera, if you want to be in the art department, if you want to be a director, whatever you want to do, start out as a production assistant. And if you want to be in camera, which is what I did, as a production assistant, always hang out by the camera team. And basically a production assistant goes and they grab water from the cooler and they bring it to the people on set. Well, go and grab some snacks and you bring it to the camera team and you say, hey, anybody want goldfish or any snacks? And they will remember you. You know, so it's smooching, as I call it. You have to kind of be nice to the people you want to work with. But that's really it. You just need to just get yourself out there, and a production assistant is an easy job where it doesn't require a lot of experience, but you can slowly work your way up in the film industry and meeting the right person and eventually, you know, working with the right person and setting a good example for yourself. You will guaranteed get a call back because finding good help is really hard. And that's really what it comes down to. I always say, no matter what you want to do in life, just don't give up. Keep trying and you know, never stop doing what you're doing, especially if you love what you're doing.
Perfect, thank you. I will definitely link your Instagram page, and you have also a YouTube channel, right?
Yep.
That you post your videos there, and your website, so people can follow you there. If they have any, they can. Your work is very inspiring, so they can look at it and see what you're doing here in the Florida Keys. Thank you again for coming here and talking to me. I mean, I came here to your studio, but thank you for inviting me, and it was great information for young people there. And thank you again, man.
Of course, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching this episode. Please share it with your friends, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.